dropping out of light speed in 3, 2, 1. Wow! Brace for impact. The large star cruiser quickly maneuvered with the agility of a fighter plane as it changed its course to avoid the Allied battleship, barely avoiding the hull. That was a close one. Okay, set course for the battlefield. We are too far from the enemy. Captain Harold sipped his cup of tea as the ship quickly turned its attention to the battlefield below and swooped down like a hawk attacking its prey, still using the inert force of the light speed. Incoming message from the SS Husash. That's the one we almost crashed with. The communication operative looked toward him, and the captain gave him a nod, so the alien captain appeared on the screen. Captain Harold ignored him just long enough to give the order. Attack pattern John Barry 3, followed up with Jack Sparrow 17. Should keep them busy until the rest arrives. Then he turned his attention to the alien, a humanoid that reminded him of a green dwarf with blue braided beard and bald head with several small horns. Mind moving your ship out of our drop zone? There are 20 more ships coming in. The alien captain, a Duskin, was about to say something as the next human cruiser flew past him at near light speed, copying the maneuver he had just performed. And instead of replying or yelling at him, the alien captain let out a scream of panic and tried to duck out of the screen. Sending you a safe course and location. Wait for the ambush command. Captain Harold cut the communication and turned to the screen. The mission was a simple invasion of a planetary body. His job with his backup force was to attract as much attention as possible and have these aliens focus on him and his attack force. The ground forces were going to attack from the other side of the planet and hopefully make landfall before they could mount a defense. That meant he had to take out as many battle satellites as possible without them realizing that they were being blinded. On his display, he saw 4 other cruisers drop out of light speed and engage the enemy. That made 6, and with a smirk, he gave the command. Commence Operation Stormtrooper! He got the green confirmation signal from the other ships as the enemy felt the battle started to shift. The large human ships that had moved like fighters and delivered serious damage on the larger capital defense ships were now targeting the smaller ships and started to miss. With several near hits and half hits, that gave the enemy hope. They immediately started a counterattack, sending in more ships, redirecting the remaining defense force to the battle. Captain Harold watched as all the calculated misses actually hit their intended targets. Satellites in orbit as well as ground-based defense bases. Lam incoming! The communication officer barked as 4 mock cruisers dropped out of light speed and engaged in the battle. They may look exactly like his cruiser, but were, in fact, just drones with a specific mission. One by one, they were shot down by the enemy, exploding into scrap metal that left a debris field that followed the planet's orbit to the other side, where they blocked the planetary raiders from discovering the incoming invasion force. The destruction gave the enemy more hope, and more ships came to engage his force. Looks like we got 95% of their defense force in our little engagement, his tactical officer informed him. Let's lure them to secondary field. Start kiting them to the secondary fleet and tell them to get ready for the ambush. His communication officer gave him a "Aye, sir," as his battle force started to feint and escape, with several showing signs of damaged engines. The enemy took the bait and followed in hot pursuit. He watched as the pursuing force came closer and closer to the ambush location, and when they got to the coordinates, they all stopped and got in for a final fight. The enemy was just about to attack when the SS Husash appeared out of thin air. The Duskin had the best stealth system and jamming systems, though they lacked armor and heavy shields. Defend the SS Husash at all costs! Captain Harold barked the order, and all the cruiser immediately engaged, and the last part of his attack fleet dropped in to help with the mop-up. The battle looked more like a swarm of bees buzzing around, as blasters, rockets, and projectiles were now used at deadly precisions. Humanity has quickly learned the lesson when it came to space warfare. You have to get in close because the natural defenses needed for space travel took care of all long-distance weaponry. If a ship needs a shield to protect you from a surprise solar eruption, then a blaster shoot from a couple of 100 kilometers would be like using a flashlight, and every ship needs plating strong enough to deal with micro-asteroids, so a projectile would be like a pea shooter at long distance and could all be easily detected and avoided. His communication officer barked out some good news. Invasion has started, minimum aerial and ground defense. He saw the last enemy ship being blown up, and he called up the captain of SS Husash. Captain Xiar, I'm sorry about the tone earlier. I thought they had given you our entry coordinates. No worries, you gave us a scare though. Somebody mixed up the coordinates. I'm just glad you managed to avoid the collision. So how is the invasion going? Harold looked over his reports. We have broken through their defenses. Most of the landing points are near the slave camps, and they have already starting the evacuation. I just hope we got there in time. Most are damn meat farms. Captain Siar nodded solemnly. I'm just glad we found you guys. Most of the other species view Duskin as a delicacy, and we thought you guys would be the same. Captain Harold got a visual, disgusting reaction at the thought of him eating a sentient being. We don't eat people. We call that cannibalism. It is taboo for us. He looked at the transcript chatter and report that came in from the ground assault. Damn, I don't think you have to worry about humanity shifting side either. The reports you gave us were true. These monsters have put humans on the menu. This is not something we wanted to be true, my friend. And I will be honest. There are those among us who were hoping it will be enough to get humankind to become our ally. We need all the allies we can get, so we can better protect ourselves from these Kanisu bastard. Captain Harold peeked up. Well, they are about to get extinct. Humankind does not take lightly to being hunted and eaten. Fire in the hole! Sergeant Jacob Wu tossed the grenade into the room just as Shu opened the door long enough for it to get inside. Shu closed the door and jumped for cover. Jacob chuckled as the stun grenade went off, blinding the guards inside. He used the undermounted door shotgun to blast the door open. His team quickly took out the blinded and shocked guards. They quickly moved into the room where 3 businessmen were trying to understand what was going on while their sensory abilities were temporarily indisposed. The rest of his teammates came in, all giving Shu funny looks. Hey, last time you shot a mini-nuke down into that Lord's mansion! Shu got into the room with the rest of the men. I never know what weapons you guys use besides you said fire in the hole. There was no fire. It was more like portable lighting than a firebomb. The others chuckled. Okay. Next time, we will be more detailed about what weapon we use. Jacob was holding back a laugh. Then he turned to their prisoner, who was being restrained in a very unfriendly manner. Now check the intel. Find the damn customer list. Lars, tag and load up the bastards. Damn, they are ugly. The 3 aliens were about the size of fully grown humans of 2 different species. 2 Kanisu, shaved bears with blonde ponytails and human-like fingers. They were dressed in something that reminded them of fundoshi. The other was a knusha. They looked like humans with a green exoskeleton and a grasshopper's head, except the mouth was filled with sharp teeth. He wore skin-tight green leather clothes that it took them a second to recognize. It was Duskin skin. John got out a knife and cut the clothes off. Then he put them in a bag to be properly disposed of. Shu just nodded as he went over the intel. He suddenly cursed, "Karash!" They all looked at him, and he turned on a larger screen. It showed an inventory list. It had more than just human and Duskin meat on it. It also had Sanchi, Navers, and Venusa meat, all living and ready for slaughter. The warehouse was 3 kilometers outside the city. Getting into this hostile city for a snatch and grab was difficult, but getting through the city would be asking for trouble. It would be like a McDonald's menu trying to run through a school of hungry kids. We ain't leaving them. We use their trucks to get there, and with luck, they won't spot us. Call it in and tell them we need extra transport and medical evac teams. You hear the boss! Tag 'em and bag 'em! Call for extraction! Marcus Smith barked the order as the rest of the men immediately followed up. They moved to the elevator, and Shu hacked the system. They could not risk the guards seeing them and sounding the alarm. It was tight, but all 10 men plus the prisoners got in, and they went directly to the basement garage, looking for their hostages' vehicles. They found the businessmen's vehicles. The drivers, 2 Kanisu, were leaning on the car, waiting. Jacob gave the signal, and they both were shot. Then they grabbed what they used for keys, dumped the hostages in the back, and filled up the 2 vehicles. They reminded them of pink limos. Apparently, pink was this world's version of black. One man got behind the wheels and off they went. Command is on the line, sir. They do not approve of this. John looked at the sergeant, who shrugged. Sergeant Wu turned to the channel. Captain Harold! Sorry for the delay, but we located the factory. It's on the planet. I don't care if you disagree. You can court-martial me later. I won't leave anybody in such a slaughterhouse. We're sending the coordinates and bringing the cargo to the location. The factory is here? God damn it. One moment. Lieutenant Holt, hold the surprise. We need to evacuate the civilians. Now let's see. I see 1 factory and there are 3 cargo ships there. We need them, so load them up and join us. We will send reinforcements and create a distraction. Over and out. Wu turned to his men. Surprise? I don't want to be here when that one get revealed. The last surprise was an asteroid. Shu laughed. You guys are crazy. I'm glad you're on our side. He kicked one of the prisoners. Did you hear that? They're going to turn this shithole into an asteroid field. No kicking the prisoner, one of the men called out. Shu looked at the man he had kicked. Hear that? Even as their prisoners, they treat you with respect. Actually, I want to know. Why the hell? Why the hell do you see us as food? He looked around the vehicle and the other men who seemed to agree with him. I want him to tell us if you allow Sergeant. Jacob thought for a second and then removed the Kanisu's gag. He knew the bastard understood them. The universal translator made that possible. Explain? You know we are intelligent beings. We use tools and fly in fracking spaceships, and you view us as mere food, but not his kin. He pointed at the Nusha. The alien moved his jaw to get some sensation in it, looking around, then grinned. Because you taste good. You're just talking about meat. Plant eaters don't stop to think about the plants you're eating, do you? And who the hell cares what food thinks? Besides, our defense system will blow that asteroid and your ships up when they approach, and I'm going to enjoy serving you to my children. They love human meat. The men looked at each other as Lars put the gag back on. We taste good? Are you kidding me? That's it? We taste good? So if we had not tasted good, they would have tried to sell us meat? The men looked shocked at each other as Shu laughed. I'm not a vegetarian, but if the cow had a car and job, I would not make him into a burger. Lars pinched the Kanisu slightly. I wonder if it tastes good. Maybe slow-cooked for a few hours with some carrots and potatoes. The men looked at him as if Lars had stepped over the line. Thought the prisoner seemed to panic as he realized he might end up on the plate. Lars got out an injector and put him under, and then did the same to the two other prisoners. I know, disgusting, but it scared this mofo. Sarg, we are getting close. Fleet will start distraction in 10. The men looked at the sergeant. Wonder what it will be this time. 10 seconds passed and they didn't hear anything. Strange? Nothing? Check the civilian media channels. There has to be something. Shu produced a pad from his pack and turned it on. The first news that popped up was that several nuclear explosions on the western continent. These explosions were located on military bases. Then it got updated as cities were being blown up as well. Those are the lucky ones. Okay, get ready. The men quickly double-checked the equipment as the vehicle got to the gate, and the guard walked over to the car. He was about to say something when he got shot. The men jumped out and quickly took out the rest of them. The County-Sioux hadn't really understood who was attacking them or what the main targets actually were, so security was not very tight. This luck would not continue for long, but for this raid, it would still hold. Jacob watched as his men spread throughout the factory. They quickly took control of the landing path and the 3 cargo ships. Once they had the control, the reinforcement came in the form of several drop ships, mostly empty or filled with medics to help with evacuation. He kept monitoring his men and could hear the cursing as his men rescued humans, Duskin, Sanshi, Navers, and Venusa victims. The men had to herd them into the cargo ships, and he knew his men were not happy about it, but they had to move fast. Then, they found the slaughterhouse and cold storage area. His men were having a hard time staying professional. Personally, he didn't care if they killed any factory worker they came across. This whole planet would be destroyed in a few hours anyway, so they were lucky to die quickly, or, from what he heard over the comms, relatively quickly. The operation took about an hour, and as he stepped on board the last transport, he stood next to Shu as he watched the factory become smaller and smaller. You're not going to blow it up? Shu looked at him a little surprised, and Jacob smirked. We don't need to. They have other plans. They breached the atmosphere and saw the space battle taking place over the western continent. It looked like the Kanisu was fighting a desperate fight against an overwhelming force. I will never grow tired of seeing this. They had no idea who they were fighting against. You guys are really making them regret targeting you guys. Shu chuckled as the transport was about to dock to the carrier when he noticed one of the planet's moons growing bigger and bigger. Well, it's going to get worse for them now. Remember the other we rescued? Jacob grabbed a pad and signed in to start his report. Shu simply nodded as he looked out of the hangar towards the moon, which was growing dangerously close to the planet while the carrier moved away. Well, we are going to recruit them to the fight, so it will hopefully be 5 of us to fight them. We need manpower for this crusade. Jacob stood beside him as the moon crashed into the planet, cracking it like an egg. Several missiles were fired from the carrier to finish the job. Shu watched in shock as the planet became little more than an asteroid field. He was unable to speak as the carrier jumped into light speed. He turned to Jacob. What about the fighters? Did you just leave them back there? He could see Shu was unable to comprehend this level of destruction and war. Those with pilots on board have their own light-speed engines. The rest were drones. Anyway, do you think the other species would join the fight? Shu looked at him. I don't think you guys need anybody else, but hell yeah. If to watch what you guys are going to do to those bastards. Sergeant Jacob Wu grinned as he started to walk with Shu. Oh, just wait and see. We have just begun. By the way, have I ever told you about the movie Star Wars? Admiral Harold was sitting by the table looking out to the view, a small solar system with only 2 planets and a gas giant. The other delegates would arrive soon, the Duskins, who had been the first to approach them to help solve the mystery of who was attacking the human colonies and kidnapping the whole population. The truth had been more horrible than anybody could have imagined. A species called the Kanisu was selling human meat to the Galactic Society. Humankind was not prepared for this. Several species considered eating sentient and intelligent beings as completely normal. They apparently felt that sentient and intelligent beings cared for their health better and produced better meat. Their meat factories made the human farm factories of cattle, and such looked like five-star hotels. These aliens had perfected keeping the victims alive as they cut off pieces that they wanted to sell. He had seen the menus, and it had made him sick to the stomach. Humanity had spent a year after they discovered this to collect allies, the 5 most common prey for the galactic community. That was 10 years ago. Most of them were experts in stealth but did not have the power to fight back. That's where humanity came in. As he sat lost in thought, the ambassadors entered and found their seats. The Duskins reminded him of green-skinned dwarves with tiny horned skulls. Hell, most human had nicknames for the other species depending on what they looked like the Sanshi or the merfolk as they were called, an aquatic species that looked like a human with fish scales and deep black eyes, the Navers or red elves, athletic and beautiful with pointy ears and reddish skin. They looked like humans with 4 fingers, and then there was the Venusa, the baby Cthulhu. The blue-skinned alien was the timidest as their meat was apparently the most tender. That was until the monsters had discovered humanity. Thank you all for coming. When we first started this alliance, we promised that we would provide you with a safe place to hide from those who hunt us. All we asked for was help to improve our technology. They all looked at him, and he knew they trusted humanity. They had saved many from the hunters, yet it had not always been victories, and humanity had lost around 1 billion on Earth to these monsters. Your people have already proven yourself trustworthy in your raids against the Galactic Republic. Your people have brought us hope that we can live free one day. Ambassador Jusu for the Duskins was the first to support him. They had become their best allies and were fully committed to the cause. Well, you have all contributed much to us as well. From the Duskin, we have improved our stealth capability to such a degree that we can move without a trace around the galaxy. The Sanshi has greatly increased our energy output and ship reaction ability. We are now able to maneuver while at light speed and no longer have to travel in a straight lane. It makes it impossible to calculate trajectory when those 2 wonderful technologies are combined, making pursuit impossible for our enemy. Both ambassadors seemed quite pleased with the praise, and Harold continued. And Naver medical advancement has aided us all in healing the terrible damage the hunters have left on those we have rescued. And to top it all, their biosphere technology has made it possible to terraform any barren rock in the universe. Because of them, we have thousands of small hidden colonies spread around the galaxy. We all are in your debt for that gift. Theani, the beautiful ambassador of the Navor, blushed slightly. You are such a charmer. I wonder what you are going to ask for next. The other ambassadors found her comment humorous and looked at Harold, then at the last ambassador, who was trying to look smaller than his form. He was always the shy one. Well, this time, we are not really asking for anything, but that's for later because how can any of us forget the Venusa, nanofactory droids, once we cracked that code and combined it with everything you have given us? And your weapons, I hope? Ambassador Jusu added with a smile. Yes, and with our weaponry, we made a few things. First, we made something for all of our protection. Harold stood up and walked over to the large window showing the waste space. As he did, he sent a signal. We took inspiration from a few movies we have. One was a movie called Star Wars, where they had a moon-sized station. As he spoke, 8 metal moons the size of Mars popped out of light speed and went into an orbital path around the gas giant. The ambassadors all looked in shock at something so big, having a light speed capability. Harold grinned. Now, the second inspiration was actually from a monster movie. In that movie, they play around with the concept of a hollow Earth. These are not warships, though we have armed them pretty well. They are well-armed colony ships capable of housing 3 billion comfortably in a biosphere, and we are gifting each of your species 2 of these. As he spoke, a hologram of these moons appeared to show the schematics. The center had a miniature sun with an internal world. With an area set aside for farming, the whole base had 144 million square kilometers of living area. The outside has several cloaked military bases as well, and we have spread about 50,000 heavy laser cannons and another 50,000 rail cannons and 50,000 missile silos. Apparently, our engineers really liked that number, but that's not the best part. He grinned and spoke to a communicator, and all the bases vanished from view. They can cloak and jump into light speed while cloaked. So, at any attack, you merely need to cloak and jump away. The range before recharging is 55 light-years. If you drain from the sun, you can squeeze out about 70 light-years. We recommend a few short jumps and only drain the sun as a last effort. They looked at him in shock and awe. It was Ambassador Theani who first managed to speak. If these are your gifts, then what are you asking for us, and where are your weapons? Harold grinned. Our base is not a colony, but a purely military base. It's a solar destroyer, and we have some more ships. We took inspiration from another show for these beauties. He spoke into the communication device. Send in the battle stars! 35 ships dropped out of light speed and flew in formation with the ease of a fighter. These ships were about 5 kilometers long and looked bulky. It looked like a battering ram with 2 flight hangar pods. Harold seemed very proud when he looked at them. We packed our most lethal weapons in these little bastards. The hull is strong enough to fly through the sun, so hunters will learn to fear them. We had one fly through a small moon. They are great at ramming things, ships, space stations, and planets. They are meant to be the new landing assault ships, but we don't have enough crew. While these suckers will drop into the atmosphere or ram space stations to drop off our Marines, they still need protection from good old-fashioned battleships, and we are running short on manpower. They looked at him. You want us to join the fight? Yes, we need you to join the fight. We know your aversion to go head-to-head against them, except for the Duskin, of course, so we are not asking for ground forces. We need crew personnel for the ships. Carnt, the Venusa ambassador, surprised everybody by speaking up. What if some of our men wanted to join your fighting force? They all looked at him, and to Harold's confusion, they all agreed with Ambassador Carnt. Of course, any who qualifies as a soldier will also be allowed, but all our military branches have strict rules for qualification to be allowed on the battlefield. I am aware of that. I do not think our physics or fighting ability will be a problem. We are, after all, a Death World species like the rest of you. Death World? What does that actually mean? Harold had heard the world being used. Apparently, Death World meat tasted better. Humanity had never investigated that term too closely, just accepted it as a derogatory term for people they like to eat. It's a world where the wildlife or nature itself would kill you with little effort. Most of the so-called Galactic Republic come from Paradis worlds. They never had to deal with predators from the start. They viewed everything that wasn't them as food, and they grew to dominate the galaxy. For every one of us, there are thousands of them. Unlike them, we all had to fight to become at the top of the food chain. We are not weak or timid. We just knew that to fight a stronger predator, we had to hide or move out of the way. That was until you guys came along and decided to fight back. Now that you offer us a place to hide our weak and secure survival, we can join the fight. Those, what did you call them? It's based on a Death Star design, and it's hard to get them to use the correct name of Hollow Moon Stations, or HMS. So pick your choice, Death Stars or HMS. Death Star has a nice ring to it, and if one of them can be used to devastating effect, then that might scare them to leave the others alone when spotted. Can that be arranged? Harold grinned. We have plans, but as I said, we need personnel.